Good morning and welcome to the worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Idaho Falls. On this morning, we welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We have several announcements this morning. As announced in the weekly update, we will congregate in the church's Peace Garden for a picnic after the service. Unless otherwise noted on your donations, today's collection, our monthly Change for Change collection, will go to Idaho Falls Habitat for Humanity. Another announcement has to do with the Idaho Falls, with the Pride celebrations happening in Eastern Idaho. So UUCIF, our church, will have a booth at both the Rexburg and the Idaho Falls Pride celebrations, and we need volunteers to help set up and take down the booth and staff it to greet the visitors and answer questions. Even if you can only stay a couple of hours, you are encouraged to join us. Here are the details. The Rexburg Pride Festival will be on Saturday, June 15. That's next Saturday, this coming Saturday, from 3 to 8 p.m. in Porter Park, with booths set up beginning at 1 p.m. Reverend Kevin will bring the equipment from the church and meet everyone there beginning 1 p.m. Please bring a lawn chair and food, drinks, if you like, though there will be food vendors around, so you won't get hungry or thirsty. The Idaho Falls Pride Festival will take place on Saturday, June 22nd, so that's weekend after, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Greenbelt stage, which is right near the church here on the Greenbelt, with a booth set up beginning at 8 a.m. The parade staging will begin at 9 a.m. in our parking lot. We'll meet at the church at 8 a.m. to transport the tent and other equipment across the street. Again, please bring a lawn chair and food and drinks if you'd like. Another announcement is that on June 23rd, which is the day after the Pride Fest here in town, the UU General Assembly Sunday morning service is held at 11 a.m. So you can log on to the uua.org website at home or come to church where the service will be broadcast on our screens. Now, please note that if you have joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones that affected your life in the recent past and that you would like to share with the congregation, you can do so by filling out one of the slips of papers that is near the entrance to the sanctuary. And if you follow this service online, you can post them in the chat box on the right of the screen. Okay, now is a good time to silence your mobile phones. Thank you. I invite you now to find a comfortable position. Close your eyes for a moment and enter in the spirit of worship with the following words from Reverend Bill Schultz. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Please join me in reading the Church's covenant, which is printed in the order of service. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We will now light the flaming chalice, symbol of our faith, to illumine this day with words by Reverend Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. It is now time for a community greeting. Let us rise and greet one another, paying special attention to those you haven't met before.
Bob. Hang in there. How are you? Yeah, good.
I chose this time. I like the great.
Good morning. I'm Vic. Nice to meet you.
One by one. Oh, no. Did you get it?
Well, good morning. Hopefully I got everybody, but if I missed you, good morning. Our call to worship this morning is the poem Only Breath by Jalaluddin Rumi, translated by Coleman Barks. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi or Zen, not any religion or cultural system. I am not from the East or the West, not out of the ocean or up from the ground, not natural or ethereal, not composed of elements at all. I do not exist, am not an entity in this world or in the next, did not descend from Adam and Eve or any origin story. My place is placeless, a trace of the traceless. Neither body or soul, I belong to the beloved, have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call and know to and know. First, last, outer, inner, only that breath, breathing, human being. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 357, Bright Morning Stars.
Bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising, days are breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers?
Good morning. Today I have a story adapted from the Cantonese folktale. It's called We Are One, and it was translated by Lawrence Yep. You gonna stand with me? Okay. Once there was a young woman who lived simply but happily with her husband and their 3 children, until one day a strange illness of the eyes came into their home. First, her husband and then their eldest son started having trouble with their eyesight. Everything looked blurry and gray to them. They went to the local doctor and they tried medicine after medicine, but nothing worked. And soon they found they could not see at all. Within a week, the illness had spread, and now their middle son could also not see, and their youngest, a daughter, was showing the beginning of symptoms of the illness, rubbing her eyes and complaining that everything looked blurry. Some of their neighbors as well were afflicted with this strange illness. The people of the village began to wonder if they would all soon lose their eyesight. The woman was beside herself with worry. She visited doctor after doctor until finally one doctor told her of a miracle herb that might cure her illness. This healing herb was a plant that grew only in the deepest part of the forest. The woman decided she must leave her family to seek out this herb. Early the next morning, she headed into the forest. She looked under bushes. She looked behind trees. She looked everywhere. But the herb was nowhere to be seen. Many hours later, exhausted but still determined, the woman came upon a small stream. She sat down to rest, still looking around her for the herb. Then she noticed a big rock had fallen into the stream, making the water run out of the stream to form a little pool. That little pool of water was flooding an anthill. Although she was in a hurry to find the herb, her heart went out to the poor ants. The woman stopped looking for the herb long enough to remove the big rock and dig a new channel for the water. With satisfaction, she watched as the water flowed away from the anthill. We are all one, she stated simply, and continued on her way. The woman slept soundly that night, curled up under a large tree with a blanket to keep her warm. And then she slept, and a strange dream came to her. In it, she was inside the anthill, surrounded by cheering ants. How do cheering ants go? Yay! Yay! The queen ant stepped forward majestically. "Do not be afraid," she assured the woman. "We have brought you here to thank you for saving our home and our lives. In return, if you ever need our help, all you need do is call for us, and we will hear you and come to your aid." As the dream faded and the woman began to wake, she heard the queen ant's voice calling after her, distinctly saying, "We are all one." Throughout that day, the woman searched for the herb. She wondered if she was already too late, and if everyone in her village was already blind. She was startled from her thoughts by the sound of a bird intent on catching a small centipede. The centipede was in a panic, scurrying across the ground as quickly as his many legs would carry him. Taking pity on the defenseless centipede, she quickly scooped him up and frightened the bird away from her prey. Saying, "We are all one," she carried the centipede to some leaves and placed him gently in their cover. That night, she again had strange dreams. This time, she was visited by the centipede. "Thank you for saving my life," the tiny voice proclaimed. "And now I will help you as you helped me. The herb you seek can be found by an ancient oak tree in the very center of the forest." An image of a gnarled and twisting trunk came to her mind as she heard the centipede state, "We are all one." And then she awoke. The day progressed, and she noticed that the trees around her were getting blurry. Gazing towards the sky, she saw that the sun was still high in the sky, and with a dawning horror, she realized that she too must have contracted the strange illness. Quickening her pace, she continued toward the center of the forest, but with every step, her eyesight worsened. Just as she was giving way to despair, she found the ancient oak tree. Even though she could barely see, she could tell it looked just like the one she had seen in her dream. Stumbling and out of breath, she began to search for the herb frantically, but it was no use. Her eyes could no longer tell one plant from another. Crying with frustration, she wept for her husband, her children, herself, and the people of her village. She turned to try to retrace her steps home, and then she remembered the ants. Perhaps the ants could help her now. She called to them, and soon enough, small voices responded. "Bend down, bend down," the queen ant's voice called. "The herb you seek is right here. I am standing on it." And gently, the woman knelt and reached toward the sound. With cautious movements, so as not to harm the queen ant, she found the herb and plucked it. Slowly and carefully, she tore a small piece of the leaf and chewed it, and almost instantaneously her eyesight was restored. Joyfully, she harvested the herbs and prepared to return to her village. Before she left, however, she thanked the ants and proclaimed one last time, "We are all one." The woman walked as swiftly as she could, all day and then all night by the light of the moon. She hoped that she would return on time to save her village from blindness. Finally, she reached her home. As she called to her children, they followed her voice, for by now they were all completely blind. Anxiously, she gave them bits of the herb, and then she waited to see what would happen. 1 minute passed, and then another, and then her eldest son laughed with joy. "I see you," he shouted. "I truly see you." Soon, everyone in the village had been cured of the strange illness, and the woman who had saved them all returned to her simple but happy life with her husband and their 3 children. And she never forgot that we are all one. We will now sing out the children.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Well, I could show you some of that potion. Let us now dedicate time to our joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones. A time to share with this religious community events that have affected your life in the recent past and speak out for those we want to hold in our thoughts. I have a few here. One is from Judy Stanley. Best wishes for his long drive today in the heat. The grandson. Okay, thank you. Hope for fixing the Teton Pass. Yes. This is a joy from Victoria. Some marvelous person has been trimming the prolific weeds in the garden and the area next to the street. Thanks to them, it's a lot of work. Another one from a joy from Victoria. Next week, Honey and I are driving to Moses Lake, Washington, to pick up a 1-year-old rescue black-mouthed cur to keep Honey active as she nears 13. Okay, thank you. Do we have some in the chat box?
Yeah, we have one this morning. This is from Dennis Jorgensen. He said, the garden I planted in January is bursting with veggies. Back to canning. I know that's a real joy.
Okay. All right. We light one last candle to lift up these joys and concerns, as well as the ones that remain in the silence of our heart. Oh. I have one. Go ahead.
I'm a full-time traveler, and I go from town to town to town, and I don't know anyone in many towns. But I always know that whatever town I end up in, I always find my family and my people at a UU. And so I'm so happy to be here today and nice to meet all of you. That's my joy and my gratitude.
Welcome, Amy.
Well, our reading this morning is from the book God is Not One, the 8 Rival Religions That Run the World and Why Their Differences Matter by Stephen Prothero. Whether the world's religions are more alike than different is one of the crucial questions of our time. Until recently, most sociologists were sure that religion was fading away, that as countries industrialized and modernized, they would become more secular. And religion is receding today in many Western European countries. But more than 9 out of every 10 of Americans believe in God. And with the notable exception of Western Europe, the rest of the world is furiously religious. Across Latin America and Africa and Asia, religion matters to Christians who praise Jesus after the birth of a child, to Muslims who turn to Allah for comfort as they're facing cancer, and to Hindus who appeal to the goddess Lakshmi to bring them health, wealth, and wisdom. And it still matters in Western Europe, too, where Catholic attitudes toward women and the body, for example, continue to inform everyday life in Spain and Italy, and where the call to prayer goes up 5 times a day in mosques from Amsterdam to Paris to Berlin. But religion is not merely a private affair. It matters socially, economically, politically, and militarily. Religion may or may not move mountains, but it is one of the prime movers of politics worldwide. It moves elections in the United States, where roughly half of all Americans say they would not vote for an atheist. All too often, world history is told as if religion did not matter. The Spanish conquered New Spain for gold. The British came to New England to catch fish. The French Revolution had nothing to do with Catholicism, and the U.S. Civil Rights Movement was a purely humanitarian endeavor. But even if religion makes no sense to you, you need to make sense of religion to make sense of the world. An offering to support the mission of this church and our Change for Change will now be given and gratefully received. In 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and his acceptance speech has become one of his iconic speeches that is quote-worthy on almost any occasion. And speaking of the reality of billions of diverse people living on Earth, Dr. King said, "We have inherited a big house, a great world house, in which we have to live together, black and white, Easterners and Westerners, Gentiles and Jews, Catholics and Protestants, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interests, who, because we can never again live without each other, must learn somehow in this one big world to live with each other." I love Dr. King's metaphor that humanity lives in a big world house because it emphasizes the relational truth of our situation. A few millennia ago, maybe even just a few centuries ago, our ancestors were sufficiently ignorant of one another and few enough in numbers to live in blissful isolation without much concern for different cultures or religions beyond that of their immediate neighbors or potential enemies. But this is certainly not the case today. We may be woefully misinformed about our neighbors at times, but in this so-called information age, I suspect there are very few people on Earth who are unaware of the multitudes who share the planet with them and that a diversity of religious beliefs exists. As Stephen Prothero said in our reading, religion is not merely a private affair. It matters socially, economically, politically, and militarily. What our neighbors believe and how that motivates their behavior impacts us all. Just think of all the conflicts that have raged between religious factions around the world throughout history, from the Crusades to conflicts between Shia and Sunni Muslims, conflicts between Protestants and Catholics, between Buddhists and Rohingyas in Myanmar, between Hindus and Muslims in India, and the ongoing violence in Gaza. Think about the destruction of Catholic churches and monasteries during the Reformation, the demolition of ancient Buddhist statues by the Taliban, or the destruction of ancient archaeological sites in Syria and Iraq by ISIS. Closer to home, think about the violence we have witnessed in churches and synagogues, or the fights over the rights of LGBTQ folks and women's reproductive rights. Even killings in one of our own congregations in Knoxville, Tennessee, just a few years ago. What our neighbors believe matters, and it can be tempting to see religion as something that has caused more harm than good through the ages. Maybe it is true. Back in the early 1990s, when we lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee, my wife, Mardee, volunteered for a while with the Chattanooga Nature Center, assisting with wildlife rehabilitation and teaching school groups about nature. One day she was teaching a lesson on the interdependence of species in a forest ecosystem to a group of students from a local Christian elementary school. And she reached the point in her lesson where she asked the question, so, what would happen if you cut down all the trees in the forest? The point, of course, was to have someone describe how it would harm all the other species that depended on the trees in a chain reaction. Instead, one of the students answered confidently, God would just put all the trees back. Thinking quickly, my wife said something like, maybe so, but do you think God might want you to take better care of the forest instead of cutting it all down? One of the Christian school teachers later complained, but how else do you respond? I don't know if those children learned much that day, but fast forward more than 30 years later, and I can almost guarantee that today most are probably climate change deniers and vote accordingly. I hope at least a few of them understood the lesson. What our neighbors believe matters. We inhabit an incredibly diverse world with an enormous population, and our big world house isn't getting any bigger. If we want to have a future, we can no longer keep to ourselves and ignore one another, nor can we ignore the evidence that the ecological constraints of our planet are being stretched toward the breaking point. Everything that unites us in values and purposes needs to be celebrated if we are to find solutions, and everything that divides us must be evaluated and challenged. And religion easily falls into both categories. In ancient times, most people lived within a worldview that theologians call henotheism. Henotheism refers to the idea that one's god or gods are local to a place and people, while accepting that other lands and peoples have other gods that are just as legitimate. Even the ancient Hebrews started out this way, placing their faith in the God of Israel, rather than deities like Baal and Astarte that were worshipped by their neighboring tribes. True monotheism, which claims that only one God actually exists, came later. Both ideas open the door to human conflict, of course, since one view easily devolves into, my God is better than your God, and the other denies the very reality of your God, claiming an exclusive lock on the truth. Even a liberal faith like ours is tested in how we respond to other religions. In broad terms, we can choose to take one of three approaches: exclusivism, inclusivism, or pluralism. Exclusivism has historically been the primary mode for most religions, and as the name implies, exclusivism asserts an exclusive claim to know the truth about God or whatever the religion holds as sacred, and any other set of beliefs is in error. Most flavors of Christianity, for example, believe that Jesus is the only Son of God and point to scripture like John 14:6 to support their case. Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Similarly, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is the recitation of the Shahada, the fundamental creed that states, there is no God but God. Muhammad is the messenger of God. Inclusivism, on the other hand, opens the door to other beliefs, asserting that one set of beliefs is absolutely true, but other sets of beliefs are at least partially true. This is different from pluralism, the third option, which asserts that all sets of belief are equally valid. I would argue that there is really no such thing as true pluralism, though, because by taking the position that all religions are equal, you are asserting at least one exclusive claim, namely that everyone else's exclusive claim on the truth is invalid. It is also a little confusing, since the term pluralism has evolved over the decades to refer to the general diversity of religious beliefs. In that sense, I would say that Unitarian Universalism is a pluralistic faith, since we make no claims to an exclusive truth, and we respect the diversity of world religions. But in our engagement with other religions, I would say we are inclusivist, since we define ourselves by affirming a set of principles that establishes a framework for what beliefs we are willing to tolerate. We believe, for example, that everyone has a right to the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, so long as your beliefs and practices do not contradict our principles. We believe there are many sources of religious truth in the world to be explored for wisdom, but we would not tolerate someone among us whose beliefs included overtly anti-Semitic, racist, or homophobic values. The Baha'i faith, which began with the teachings of the exiled Iranian prophet Baha'u'llah in the 19th century, professes a similar belief in the universality of religious truth, but they take it a step further. They believe in the coming of a single world religion for all of humankind, that Christians, Muslims, and everyone else will eventually come around and ultimately see the wisdom of the Baha'i faith. This point of view is similar to the idea of the so-called perennial philosophy, which has evolved since the Renaissance and was popularized in the 20th century by Aldous Huxley. Proponents of the perennial philosophy argue that there is a fundamental unity among the world's faiths at their core, though there are obviously differences in beliefs and practices. It is the idea that is popularly expressed by the saying that all spiritual paths lead up the same mountain. Huxley, for example, tried to demonstrate an essential common mysticism among Buddhist, Taoist, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian beliefs by comparing excerpts from the writings of the sages and spiritual teachers from each tradition. While I believe there is value to such exploration, and I believe there is some truth to the idea of a fundamental spiritual unity that underlies reality, I think it is arrogant to make broad statements that overlook the essential differences between faiths. Can we really say that a Christian who seeks salvation in an eternal afterlife is heading to the same mountaintop as the Buddhist who seeks enlightenment in this world, or the Taoist who seeks to act in accordance with the natural harmony of things? And what about humanists, religious naturalists, and others who may deny that anything supernatural or mystical exists at all? How can they be headed to the same mountaintop by such diverse paths? We must be careful making bold assumptions about other religions. We risk minimizing real differences that matter, even with the best of intentions. It is also easy to start from a very inclusive position of welcoming diverse believers into the tent, and then wind up denigrating the substance of their beliefs as mere stepping stones to our one true faith. Historically, such triumphalism, as it is called, has been promoted by many Christian theologians who see Christianity as the culmination and replacement for Judaism. You may also see this arrogance in the writings of many early anthropologists, describing so-called primitive religions based in nature among indigenous peoples. Until recent decades, Unitarian Universalists have been mostly come-outers who were raised in another faith tradition, though it is growing more common for those who find their way to our faith to have no prior religious affiliation. It may be tempting for us to think that we have outgrown the religion of our youth in the spiritual journey that brought us here, that more traditional faiths are somehow immature or unsophisticated. Among the more militant non-religious, what I call the angry atheist crowd, there is an attitude that all religious people are naive and unsophisticated and simply need to outgrow the superstition of religion altogether. I would caution us to be more humble and more respectful of diversity, even if we feel we have found a religious home in Unitarian Universalism that seems far superior to anything else we have encountered. The fact is, everybody feels this way about their chosen faith to some degree, or they would still be searching. Despite the predictions from many learned thinkers for decades, it appears that religion is not going away anytime soon, nor do the world's faiths appear to be converging toward one universal faith for all of humankind. If anything, religious diversity is increasing as different cultures encounter one another. There are fascinating new flavors of Pentecostalism developing in Asia and Africa, for example, blending Christian theology with indigenous folk religions. And contrary to the dreams of the angry atheists, I do not believe it is possible for humanity to outgrow religion altogether, since I feel the impulse to spirituality is inherent to what it means to be human. We have an innate sense of the sacredness of life and will always find ways to express it. Religion is a means to celebrate our awe and wonder And it is also a comfort when we are weak or grieving or just need to lay our burdens down. Suffering is inevitable in life, and we may find comfort in reaching out to the sacred mystery for help. Perhaps even a precious Lord to take our hand when we are tired, weak, or alone. And no matter what some religions claim, there is no such thing as unchanging truth. Even the oldest religions that still have followers are no more than 4,000 years old, a mere blink of the eye in the cosmic timeline. All religions evolve because of disputes over doctrine, or by contact with other traditions, or when new leaders or prophets emerge with new teachings, or simply because of social and cultural changes. 500 years after the Protestant Reformation, there are now over 200 major Protestant denominations and over 30,000 independent Protestant sects when you count unaffiliated churches. Just think how different our own Unitarian Universalist faith is today from that of our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors. There is a Taoist saying that the Tao has 10,000 gates, and it is up to each of us to find its own. Perhaps there is an underlying sacred mystery or God or Tao, some ultimate unity that calls to us on our spiritual journey. Then again, maybe that is just wishful thinking. Our faith is open to exploring the 10,000 gates the world's religions offer. And perhaps the best thing we can do is to wander among them until we find something that invites us to go deeper, at least for a time. But if you do find such a path, or sometimes a handful of paths over the course of a lifetime, remember to be wary of exclusive claims about the truth. Our great world house is filled with a diversity of beliefs, with new ones springing up almost daily. And we are still faced with the necessity of learning to live together. Perhaps more than at any other time in history, we need to understand the beliefs of others. We need to promote at least a basic religious literacy in our schools so we can understand the perspectives of others, even if we find little to agree upon. As it says in the Quran, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. What I believe the world needs is not a single religion that everyone embraces, nor the abolition of religion altogether, but a deliberate practice of promoting acceptance of the diversity of beliefs that continues to make the human story so fascinating and vital. It is urgent and critical work that impacts everyone alive and even the planet itself. In 1961, in words reminiscent of Dr. King's Great World House, the theologian Wilfred Cantwell Smith said bluntly, "Unless men can learn to understand and be loyal to each other across religious frontiers, unless we can build a world in which people of profoundly different faiths can live together and work together, then the prospects for our planet's future are not bright." As Unitarian Universalists, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth is enshrined as one of our 7 principles. So we ought to be the exemplars of religious tolerance in the world. I think we do a pretty good job, and we are truly open to learning about other faiths and beliefs. Given the current state of the world, tolerance would be a welcome beginning, but I think the world needs more than just tolerance based on shared values like the love we have for our children and the desire to live in peace. We need to nurture a genuine understanding and appreciation of each other's beliefs and vision for the world so we can learn somehow in this one big world to live with each other and to sustain our planet for future generations. Differences do matter, And there are certainly visions rooted in authoritarianism and exclusivity that we must reject and resist. But I remain convinced that there is far more that unites humanity for the common good than divides us. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit once again and join in singing our closing hymn, number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Our closing words are the poem Mysteries by Mary Oliver. Truly, we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood. How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of lambs. How rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with gravity, while we ourselves dream of rising. How two hands touch and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, "Look," and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads.
Please join me in reading the words for the extinguishing of our chalice flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.